Okay, good morning all. This is a presentation about travel photography, but it can also be applied to any kind of photography. So, what we are going to be today learning about is the 7 deadly sins of travel photography. So, now, what do you think these deadly sins can do to your travel photograph? Anybody? What do you think they can do to your photograph? Anyone? Yeah, please go on. Sorry? Ruin it. Yes, absolutely. So it actually will degenerate your, if it works, yes, hopefully it does. Yeah, it degenerates your travel photo into a travel snapshot. So it's like a very casual kind of a photograph that you will have rather than a proper destination image. Okay, so our task is to make a destination desirable. That's what we do as travel photographers. Yeah. So if we do not do it well, then we are not doing justice to it. So today we're going to be learning about the 7 deadly sins. Not just yet. I'm not going to share about it now, but a little later. So what we do is we actually make a living out of the stories that we tell and share with people. And those of us who are not doing it, they someday hope to. Right? So it's really our responsibility to do so 1,000 words at a time and forcefully deliver that objective. Because each image speaks 1,000 words as somebody said it, right? So we need to do that. So in this presentation, what we are going to be talking about or learning about is what are these 7 deadly sins, how they adversely affect a photograph, each one of them, and yeah, pro tips to avoid these sins. How can we actually take care of this while we are shooting? It's not something that you need to remember or cram mug like you would do for an examination, none of that, but it will settle down here after the presentation, I guarantee that. Okay? So let's look at the sins. The first sin is sin of exposure. Sorry for the mathematical symbols. Um, those of you who are not familiar with it, this is less than, equal to, greater than equal to, less than equal to, all of this. Yeah? So what does it mean? One is correct exposure versus under or overexposure. Right? The second is deliberate use of underexposure and deliberate use of overexposure, because that also is important at times. And I'll be taking you through some of the examples so that you are aware of that. Here is a correct exposure. Why is it correct? It's a very difficult lighting. You have a sun in the background, but you can still see the outline of the sun very clearly. Yeah? You can see the joy on the face of the child. And you can see all the grays which are around. So, in this kind of lighting condition, I would say this is a perfectly correct exposure. But then there are better examples when you don't have this kind of a challenge. Look at this. Yeah? So this is correct exposure. Now to get this, the best light is the blue hour. Anybody knows about blue hour? Hands please. You know about blue hour. The others who do not know, it is after sunset, once the orange sky is gone, it's before the dark, it starts to become blue. Similarly, in the morning, before sunrise, the sky from dark black, it starts to become blue, then orange, and then the sun rises. So that blue hour is actually the best lighting for this. Another correct exposure. Now this is a challenge you will always face when you have the indoor lighting and the outdoor lighting in the same frame, because the outdoor will always be a lot brighter than the inside. Yeah, in this case you can see those windows out there. So you need to be mindful of that light so that it doesn't burn out. You don't overexpose. Yeah? Uh, yes. Another example of similar lighting, indoors and outdoors. So you need to ensure that you are able to take care of the details which are outside in very bright areas, as well as details in the inside which is dark, which is darker relatively. Yeah? Now this is a case of deliberate underexposure. Adobe currently is doing a campaign which says silhouettes are the new black. So whenever you have silhouette situation, underexpose. Expose for the background, not for the people. Another example of the same. Yeah, here you're exposing for the background and the sun which is setting, not so much for this, the subject, but then the subject becomes very graphic. So you're deliberately underexposing so that you get that graphic feel. Here is another example. This is not moving. Okay, moved. So here you have, so that's sun right there, and you're getting the feel of the place. Yeah? Now the next example I'm going to show you is of deliberate overexposure. Here I actually do not care about the mountains in the background because my subject is this grazing horse. Yeah? Similarly, here, sky does not matter to me. My subject is these berries. So this is about the correct exposure, deliberate underexposure, and deliberate overexposure. Now let's look at why do you deliberately underexpose so that you can later correct that picture in post-processing or in processing. Let's see. Here is a picture I took of the New York skyline, and this image was deliberately underexposed because the sun was right there in that corner. And this is what I did after processing. The same image. So I was mindful of what I will be getting as the final result. So you notice the difference between this and this. Or will it move? Yes, it will. This is deliberately underexposed. Yeah, so that I could get this. Yeah, you need to ensure that none of the areas becomes totally burnt out in your image when you're shooting it, so that you can then later retrieve the details in processing. Yeah, so this is deliberate use of underexposure and overexposure. Now let's see how we can actually address this issue of underexposure, overexposure, and get around this sin of exposure. Use the metering scale. This is typically found at the in your that viewfinder. You'll find it at the bottom. Correct exposure, darker, which is underexposure, brighter, which is overexposure. So just keep an eye on this when you're pressing the trigger. You will find that scale at the bottom of your viewfinder. Yeah? Have you seen it? Yes, okay. Here is the other one, which is when you're reviewing your images, keep the histogram on. Are you familiar with histogram? Those who are not, please raise their hands. Those who are not, raise their hands, not just, yep, okay. Histogram is something which actually is a graph that tells you where all the data is there in your frame. Okay? So, if the histogram is bunched towards the left, that means your image is underexposed and it is dark. If it is bunched towards right, then your image is overexposed and it's going to be too bright and you may not be able to recover the details in the bright areas. So this is the correct exposure where the histogram is like a normal distribution curve, the bell curve. Anybody who studied statistics or math would know about the bell curve. So that is what you need to look for when you're actually exposing your images and later reviewing them. So shoot the image, when you're reviewing it, keep your histogram on so you know what exactly is happening in that frame, and then go on and perhaps click another frame or few more frames. Moving to the second sin. The sin of multiplicity of subjects. Yeah, in the same frame. Here is one culprit. Multiplicity of subject. Can somebody tell me where his or her eye is going right now? Is it going to the Nat Geo theater, or is it going to the people going up, or is it going to the clothes displayed here, or the aircraft which is hanging around on top? Where is your eye going? It's actually hovering all around, right? So it's multiplicity of subjects, and that is a sin. You got to guide your viewer where he should be looking. Another ultimate cluttered multiplicity of subjects example is here. Where will you look? Right? Yet another example where although the subject is very strong, but it is still getting diluted because of the skyline in the background. Helicopter is a unique subject, so you will be looking at them, but you will also be distracted by the skyline in the background. Yeah? Yet another example of multiplicity. Where will you look? At the horizontal stripes of the zebra crossing and the building? Or those two big eyes? Or that girl walking out of the frame? Or this bus which is kind of entering into the frame? Where will you be looking? Or the M&Ms? Right? It's not a bad shot, but there is multiplicity of subjects here. So how do you avoid that? Let's now look at some shots where there is no multiplicity of subjects. Here is one. This is inside Oculus, the transportation hub near WTC in New York. There's no multiplicity of subject. You can straight away see what's the subject. And it's the grand hall of the transportation hub. Another example. There is no dilution here. The subject is very clearly in your face. Yep. So if you can see that subject very clearly, there is hope. Right? Here, no multiplicity of subject. The subject is perfectly framed and you can see it. Yeah? So try and use this. Now let's see the how-to of avoiding this multiplicity. So before you shoot, pause and consider what is going to be your subject and then sacrifice all else totally. Like in this case this is that same transportation hub from the outside, Oculus. I have cut out the building tops because my subject is this dove, this building. Yeah? This is the third sin. Is dilution of visual power. Even if your subject is strong and it's all there, this dilution is something that you need to be mindful of. Can you see any dilution in this image?
There's 3 subjects.
There are
3 subjects.
3 subjects.
Well,
Okay? Right? So that's one. Anything else? I think the subject actually is the guy who is jumping in, except there are other things which are kind of taking your eye away. Now let's look at this. So now there is no such dilution. Yeah? Some other examples of where there is no dilution. Right? Or this. Or this. Although there are many people in the frame, but there is no dilution. You know exactly what your subject is or who your subject is. Do you agree? Let's look at the how-to of avoiding this dilution. First thing is shoot multiple shots. So people ask me, why do I go like one AK-47, tuck, 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 and shoot some 5 frames or 6 frames in one go? Because when you're shooting a subject which is dynamic, there are a lot of movement, a lot of characters in that scene, then you need to actually capture them all and see which is the best one later when you're doing your sorting and editing. Yeah? Second one, use shallow depth of field. Those who do not know what is depth of field, raise their hands, please. Like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Depth of field is when you focus on a subject. When your camera is focused on a subject, there is something a little before that subject and something little behind that subject which will be in focus. Everything else will be blurred. So this entire zone is called depth of field. Keep it as narrow as possible by opening the aperture of your camera or the whole of your camera wide open. So once you do that, the depth of field shrinks and you will be only focusing on your subject and rest all will be blurred. Clear? Or there is question about it? If there is, I'll come back to that. Yep. Second, ensure that non-subjects are focusing on the subject. Like in that girl throwing boomerang, there were other people in the frame, but they were all looking at the boomerang at the girl. So I'm saying ensure that that entire movement in that frame is towards the subject. Everybody is looking at the subject or is pointing towards the subject or whatever, so that even your viewer focuses on that subject. Also, tight frame, cutting out extraction, those extra things. Remove them. Like you saw that building which I had shot, the Oculus building. So I cut out the buildings, the high-rise buildings behind. So do a tight framing. Also, finally, use post-processing to your advantage. If there is something which is non-subject and is very bright, try and darken it. And you can easily do that in any of the editing softwares like Lightroom or wherever. Yeah? Now let's move to the fourth sin. The sin of division of focus. Where Where will you look in this frame? Where will your eye go? Anyone? To the cloud in the center, okay? Not to the cloud on the side. It's kind of in some way distracting. What about this fringes? Okay, so in that case it's not too bad a frame, but to me it is distracting that you have three subjects in this frame. One is this cloud, one is this cloud which is taking away from this, and this green line. This is slightly better, I would say. Yeah, but the ideal thing in this, if you have to avoid dilution, is this. Do you notice now all elements are tied together? Would you agree, or there is some divergence of views on this? Agree? Just speak up, please.
What is the subject of this photograph?
You tell me what's the subject in this photograph. It's the light. That is the subject. That is the subject. And that is what was suffering in the earlier two images. Let's see. Yeah? They hold you in the frame. They don't let you go out of the frame. As a viewer, you remain in the frame. Here is another example of dilution. What is the subject?
It's almost like the subject is out of the shot because they're both looking at it again.
Okay, in this case, the guy who is looking out of the frame, this guy, seems to be the subject, although my subject is this. So the frame is suffering. That's why I said sometimes you need to shoot bursts, particularly in such situations. Now look at the next shot. Slightly better, because that guy is looking away. Yeah? But this is the best. Where this guy is looking towards the camera, general direction of the camera, that guy is looking away. So there is no dilution. This is very clearly a frame in which, though there is another element, still there is no dilution. You will still look at the subject. Right? Any questions so far? Okay. Let's look at how to of avoiding dilution. Like I said, be mindful of other elements because they are also going to be affecting your frame. Shoot bursts and compose the subject to make it the most prominent. Whatever is your subject, he should be the most prominent. Use various techniques. Maybe you blur them or whatever. Yeah? There is sin of diffusion of story. In fact, Gianni had a lovely session yesterday on storytelling. So, thanks for being here. So, the sin of diffusion of story is the next sin, and that is how it goes. There is a diffusion of story here. Can somebody tell me why? And what is the diffusion? Your eye doesn't stand anywhere. It kind of hovers around with the birds, and incidentally there are people there, etc. Look at this. Now there is no diffusion. You notice that? There is some nice harmonic movement in the scene. all those birds are flying and people are looking at them. So that's the story. Another one. There is diffusion here. How to avoid that? Let's see. You see the difference between this and this? Yeah? Because you are actually now totally looking at that story which is happening in this, and those people are also helping you. Another example of diffusion. Look at this. There is some bit of lack of harmony in this whole frame. But look at this. This is a lot more harmonious. See the difference between this and this? Yeah? No diffusion here. Right? Because even the second character is looking at the subject. Or no diffusion here. Here you use a panning technique so that you remain focused on your subject. Despite huge amount of clutter, and it's colorful clutter, you are able to isolate your subject. Right? So, use techniques. Let's just move on to how to of it. Shoot multiple shots, like I said. Be experimentative. Use techniques like panning or whatever else you have. In fact, zoom burst also can be used. Anybody familiar with zoom burst here? Those who know about zoom burst, show hands please. Nobody? One. Okay. Zoom burst is when you have a long exposure, let's say a 2-second exposure, and you have a long lens, let's say a 24-105 lens, and you press the trigger. After that you smoothly zoom in or zoom out in those 2 seconds. So you will have nice dynamic frame. Yeah. So use techniques so that you can get some interesting result and there is no diffusion. And then crop. And finally, be mindful of other elements which are in the frame. Like in this case, you notice all those people who are looking at this, these newlyweds doing their candid shoot in front of Mermaid in Warsaw. Yeah? So I'm saying, remember that there are other things also which are coming into your frame. Have a look at that before you press the trigger, or if that's a very dynamic thing, then shoot bursts. Next sin. This is my favorite sin. Every photographer starts with this. The sin of greed. This is about unnecessary inclusions. Okay? Here is one example. The sin of greed. I wanted people also in the frame. Okay? See this. So where is your eye going? God alone knows. You may be actually looking at the skyline or at this, the people there. Yeah? This is sin of greed. And this is actually a, will it work? Stuck. It's okay. Technical glitch. Just figure it out, please. It's showing something there in the corner. Okay, so we are good to go. No, not working. You want to restart the presentation? Shall I take this out? Okay. Sorry guys. We'll meet after the commercial break. Done? Just move that slide which are not moving. Want to restart the computer? We have time. So till now, which is the sin that you identify your photography with? Let's just get on to that now first. What about you? Everything. What about you guys?
The light, because I'm shooting just with the front camera
Uh-huh.
and I'm working with the light indoors.
So she has problem with the exposure because she's shooting with phone camera. Got that. What about you?
Probably inclusion.
Inclusion of
Just,
unnecessary.
well, it's can be difficult to like when you show that shot of the shot with all the different people and different things.
Yeah.
You have to figure out. Sometimes you need a shot.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I need to get a shot of this thing, and I can't get rid of some of the others. So I
Yes.
think that's a challenge.
Okay. And how about you?
So learning.
Still learning. Techniques. Okay. What about you? A little bit of everything. Cluttered. Okay. Can you speak up so that others can hear you?
First thing I'd like to be thinking about is slowing more in the photograph and less about this is more about what is the story, what is this photograph trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a different kind of mindset because when I first started getting into photography, I started noticing that I was actually posting more and more projects
Okay.
around the world basically.
Huh.
And it really helped me see things when it's another kind of paradox.
Okay.
That's all.
Got that. Let me just get to the slide we were on. That's okay. So we were here, right? Here.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is without greed. So this is with greed and this is without greed. Yeah? This is with greed and this is without greed. You notice the difference? This versus this. Or this. This is with greed. I wanted a little bit of everything. I wanted the environment, the people behind, all of that. Yeah? And this is without greed, where my subject is absolutely clear. Yeah? Here is a frame. Can somebody tell me what is the subject in this frame? I'm so greedy that I have included hell of a lot in this. So what is the subject in this frame? Those green bar. No, that is not my subject. That's the problem. Ooh, that word. Now see. Now see. So this is where my subject is totally lost. But that's not the case. Oops. What happened? It just moved. Okay. And this is where the subject is clear. Here, another frame with greed. I wanted a colorful wave also. Yeah? But look at this. This solid focus on what I'm shooting, rather than being greedy like here. Yeah? And now, after this, I'm going to tell you there are situations when greed is good. Sometimes greed is good. Like here. You notice this entire sea of humanity bringing in that cloth. In Sri Lanka, this is called dressing up Buddha as a monk. So this 1100 feet circumference stupa is dressed up in the saffron cloth which these people bring. Here the greed is good. I want to actually capture the whole scene of what's being done. Another example of greed is good is here. 3 of the zebras are totally ignoring him, saying you don't belong to us. Okay? This guy is disgusted with what this jerk is doing, and that guy is deliberately looking away saying, joker. And this guy is having his mud bath. So here I want to have the entire environment. Yeah? Because that completes my story. So these are the situations in which greed is good. Now coming to the how-to of avoiding that greed. Be clear about your subject. Before you start shooting, be clear what you are shooting. What or who is your subject? Yeah? Look for distractions. They have a habit of creeping in through edges, corners of your frame. That's where typically these culprits will sneak in from. So before you press the trigger, look for those. Mercilessly exclude them. Once you've spotted them, totally exclude them. Zoom in, go closer, crop it, whatever. Just exclude them. Yeah? Any questions on this? Fine. Now that brings me to my favorite sin, the 7th sin. And that is a sin we are all, guilty of. The sin of satisfaction. I got my shot. The sin of easy satisfaction, I got it, okay. So I'm out of here, 10 minutes, out. That's typically what happens. And let's see how that satisfaction can deprive you of some really good shots. If you are happy with this shot, which is not a bad shot, it's interesting, yeah? But then, if you are happy with this shot and you walk away, then you miss out on something like this, which is a story where a foreigner is also jumping into the whole fray and is performing with them. Yeah? Or if you are happy with this shot, this is from Praha, and if you are happy with this shot, then you miss out on this. Yeah? If you are happy with this shot, he's a fisherman who is trying to clean his net, then you miss out on this, where the dynamism of that net brings your eye to the fish. Look at the difference in this versus this. Both are good shots, there's nothing wrong with them. By the way, all of these are good shots, nothing wrong with them. But there is a slight difference, between this and this. See the difference? Okay. Here, if you are satisfied with this shot, then you would miss out on something like this, where you may get a rainbow around your subject. And this happened precisely some 15 minutes after I took this shot. Because there was a slight bit of drizzle and suddenly sun came out and this nice little rainbow formation happened. Yeah? So moving on to the how-to of not being easily satisfied. Be critical of the frames you shoot. Do not like the first frame you shoot. It's like those of you who are used to writing, they know that the first couple of paragraphs is you warming up. So throw them out. Same thing in photography. Don't be satisfied easily. Don't just say, okay, it's done. Be critical of every frame that you shoot. Review it and then figure it out if it is really working. Never pack up your camera when you're out shooting. Always keep it out. Keep it ready. Keep it handy. You don't know when the moment will come. Same way, keep trying different points of views. I call it working the scene. That's what I call it. Because every scene is dynamic. There is a lot of movement and motion in that. So, work the scene. Try different points of view. I don't know. To shoot this, for example, I will not only shoot from here, I may go over to that or to that level and then try and shoot this. These washing machines behind you. Yeah? So shooting from here gives you a nice little conference room. But shooting from other angles may give you something else. So try those different points of views. Yeah? So with that, we come to the discussion. Anything, any questions till now that you have, you may ask me. And how much time we have? Great, so we have 5 more minutes. So any questions about this? Yes, please. Louder, everybody needs to hear.
A question about exposure. I'm shooting inside a building recently and I exposed correctly.
Okay. She is talking about exposure of how to manage the inside and the outside. Inside is dark, outside is bright. Okay, so what you do is you saw some of the frames which I had shot, in which I later processed them to bring out the darker areas. You need to do processing. You need to be mindful that this challenge exists. So maybe underexpose a bit so that outside light is not totally burnt out. And later on bring out the darker areas in processing. Yeah? Yes, please. Can't hear you.
I love that you can focus on a single subject. But how do you deal with permission? Do you get releases from them if they're not someone that you know?
Permission. Okay. let me, here for everybody's consumption, let me tell you two things. One, if you are shooting for commercial use, you need permissions. You will need to walk about with your model release forms and stuff like that. If you are shooting for editorial reasons, you do not need permissions. Okay? And I'm not talking portraits now, I'm talking any kind of photography, because all street photography has a lot of people. So you do not need any permission when you are actually using that image editorially. Okay? The exception to that rule is some of the celebrities. For them, you still may need their permission. Does that answer your question? Yeah, you still have some doubts.
Legally, yes, but ethically, no. A person being highly.
Okay, now the second thing is, if you are clearly focusing on a single subject, let's say I'm shooting you, and my first reaction will be, I'll come to you, I'll ask you, are you comfortable if I take a couple of pictures of yours? And after that I'll talk to you and then tell you, don't mind me. You do what you are doing and I'll continue to shoot, don't worry. That's how I actually shoot. So whatever pictures you saw of single people, like that guy with Chilam, all of those images are after I have spoken to them, I have taken their permission and then shot them. Any others? One sec. The screen, why is it gone? Yeah,
And how long would it typically take you to...
louder.
Sorry. How long would it typically take you to post-process a photo? And
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
per photo? So what you're doing is in Lightroom? Or...
Lightroom.
Okay.
You just need to know what you're going to do. For example, that dark shot, I know I have to cut the highlights, I have to take out the shadow areas, I have to bring them out, right? So one slider this way, one slider this way, and then I put my hand on the option button and move the white and the black sliders so that I bring out the color, and then go to the split toning and just adjust a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellows in the darker, in the shadow areas. That's it. 30 seconds. Initially it may take a little time, but later it will be 30 seconds. Go to my website. In fact, why is this always on the first slide? I'm fed up. Can we go to the last slide, please? Last slide. Yes, just go to the last slide, straight away. And put it up. Yep. Bas, that's it. So you can connect with me in any of this. My website is travelU.re. So if you go to my website and search for Lightroom, you will have a total tutorial on Lightroom available to you. How to use it. You can just print it out and for the first few shots, just follow the instructions verbatim. Yeah? And by the way, it's not unique to Lightroom. It works for all kinds of processing software because ultimately the things you are editing are same in all those softwares. So you'll be editing highlights, shadows, blacks, whites, split toning, all of that will be there in other softwares too. Anyone else? So are we done? You can take a photo of this so that you can connect with me later. And thank you. You have been a tremendous audience. Thank you.